Hello, all, and welcome to the Montana Chamber of Commerce Capital Connection. I'm Sheridan Hoyer. I'm the Government Relations Specialist here at the Montana Chamber of Commerce. I almost wanted to spell my last name out of habit there. That was the weird pause. Things are moving along. We had a nice day extra with Easter break over the weekend. So the House and Senate came back in today. We thought maybe they weren't going to start until the evening. That's what they did right at the end of transmittal. But alas, I was in House Appropriations this morning at 8. The first House floor agenda started at 10 a.m. this morning, and they're just finishing up second reading on that. I think about to start into third reading, and then the Senate agenda, the first agenda starts at, I think, 12:30 today, and then they have another one this evening. So lots of things getting to second reading, not a lot left in committees to testify on in the way we have been throughout the session, more so to the point in the session where there's free conference committees or conference committees, but lots of things still in the halls and floating around. So just going through our priority list, Medicaid, we're free and clear there. We got that signed quite a while ago, and it literally feels like Medicaid expansion. That argument was decades ago, but apparently it was only a couple months, but you couldn't tell me that. Then after that, we've got our TIFs are looking good. Senate Bill 2, I think, passed the floor last week in the Senate. It was on the floor in the Senate, at least, and it has coordinating language with Senate Bill 117, which did pass the floor, and where if Senate Bill 117, which limits the amount of local government spending growth per year, passes, then SB 2 is null and void. So have to take another look at that one if you have specific questions. But that happened last week in the TIF argument. On childcare, our trust language is still moving forward on Senate Bill 565. And we're not spending too much time in it, but we are lending our support in committee there. The other bill we have is Senate Bill 321. That one was up in appropriations this morning. So they had a really big fiscal note when we started the session, when we started that bill over in the Senate, but that's our three-pronged approach for child care and child tax credits. So it's got a child tax credit, a child care worker tax credit, and then a business dependent care tax credit. So a business could use that however they see fit for their employees. That's pretty vague on purpose. So they can do whatever works for them, and they are all refundable tax credits. And the dollar amounts have been shortened and added and things like that to try to get that fiscal note in a space that is maybe usable or might be passed. But honestly, we've made it further than I expected with some of the thoughts that were shared prior to the session from both the bill sponsor and other folks in the building, the second floor included. But we're seeing what we can do there. Lots of politics and personalities at play, but we had an okay hearing this morning in appropriations and doing what we can to at least get it out of there. Not a lot of likelihood that the governor cares for it and will sign it, but I think it really proves that we are moving the conversation forward and that business sees childcare as a workforce issue, and we're trying to be part of the solution, which is what we've heard a lot on the House floor as other childcare bills have come up. On tort reform, the bills were moving right along. No new changes there from what you heard last week. Same with all of our MEPA provisions with the Montana Environmental Policy Act. No new big changes there. And then when everyone knows, probably if you've read the news at all, that tax conversation is sucking all of the air out of the room. And so I've heard a number of times that the cake has been baked, and we just need to take our slice and deal with it. But we're doing what we can as far as if you're following it all, as far as bills that are in play and what we're working on. The first one was House Bill 231. That was that big governor's bill that had the homestead, comstead, agstead exemptions in it. That was at the outset. That came from the Property Tax Task Force. Then there was House Bill 155. That was the Democrat version of that. And those were the two big players in the game. SB 90 took bed tax and rental car tax money and put it towards property tax relief. We opposed it at the outset, and then once the money for tourism promotion was remained in tourism promotion, then we were supporting that bill. And there were quite a few pushes to try to get that going. There seems to be a there's no interest in keeping that alive. As far as a majority of folks to keep that alive, as evidenced by a couple of blast motions last week. That the prevailing argument is that isn't enough tax relief, which we say it's the chamber and some of the business community that we know. but we would like that to be part of the solution, so it's not all coming on the backs of business. The prevailing or the larger argument here is that with the line in the sand that the governor has drawn with not taking general fund money or income tax money to help property tax relief, and without any new source of revenue, all we're doing is shifting the pieces in that pie. And we've heard that, we've said that, we sound like a broken record, but that doesn't seem to be landing, or at least doesn't seem to matter too much to legislators. So at this point, we're just trying to make sure that they have all the facts, that this will be a tax shift to businesses across the state, and make sure that they have all the facts as they go to make their final votes in these final weeks. One other piece that I missed to mention is that Senate Bill 542, which is Wiley Galt's bill, it started in the Senate, and it has a very broad title. So those of you who are on this call probably know this, but just in case anyone is listening in later, if you have a broad title, you can amend kind of anything into that title. And so his original bill language would freeze property tax values for 2 years and just as things sit, but that made it through the Senate with hardly any testimony, and then it made it through the House, or to the House, and in House taxation last Friday, they amended a conglomeration of some of the parts of that House Bill 231 I mentioned with some of the parts of House Bill 155, plus a property tax rebate for one year as things move along. And it's very good and complicated, and there's not quite enough time here now with like 2 weeks left to try to understand all of the impacts of all of these pieces of legislation. And like I said, no real appetite to care about that residential tax shift in that building. So we're doing what we can and trying to make sure that we're trying to represent our membership as best we can, knowing that there's a lot of political and personality games at play, but that is the tax update there, and all of our sources say that we should have an answer on what sort of slice of that cake we're going to receive by the end of this week. So stay posted for next week, and I think that is the overall list of our big priorities. Taxes are still talk of the town, and I've learned to alliterate. So I'll stop the recording there, and happy to take any questions.